From WAMU 88.5 at American University in Washington, welcome to the Politics Hour starring Tom Sherwood. I'm Kojo Nandi. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC and a columnist for the current newspapers. Still in recovery from your trip to Cuba?
Oh, having a great time. People are really interested in them. There are just so many surprising facts. I'm going to, love it probably another month and a half.
Yes, well, that's why I said he's still in recovery from his trip.
If you can go,
to Cuba.
if you can figure out a way to go, the embargo is like a coral reef. There are so many holes in who can go and who can't go that you should go if you can. It's really amazing.
You can find a way to go some way or the other. Joining us in studio is Brian Frosh. He's Attorney General for the state of Maryland. He's a former Democratic state senator representing Montgomery County. General Frosh, good to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Kojo.
If you have questions or comments for Brian Frosh, call us at 800-433-8850 or send email to kojo@wamu.org. Your counterpart in Virginia, Mark Herring, decided that he would try to overturn rules that were initiated after his predecessor, Ken Cuccinelli, advised the Board of Health there that rules should require the Commonwealth's existing abortion clinic to widen hallways, add parking spaces, and make other costly building renovations, essentially having them operate under the same conditions as hospitals. Well, Mark Herring is saying no. He issued a legal opinion opposing that, so he's going to reopen debate on that issue. On June 4th is when the Board of Health there will review the rules that were issued back in 2012 after the advice was given by Ken Cuccinelli. What do you think will happen there, Tom?
I think there's the states, this purple state is moving away. I thought you were going to ask the Attorney General what he thought about it.
I'm going to ask him
my
too.
next question. This is more of the moving into the purple land of America for the state of Virginia.
Exactly right. And Mr. Attorney General, what do you think about the move of your colleague in Virginia?
Well, I don't know the law in Virginia, but I do know Mark Herring. I know he's an excellent lawyer, and I happen to agree with him on most issues. So
we're going to go with him on this one. We will have to see what happens when June comes around and what the Board of Health does. On another issue you might want to weigh in on, police cameras in the district. The district is having what I consider to be, Tom, a really good conversation, a necessary conversation about what the rules should be regarding who has access to the footage from those police cameras. Everybody seems to agree that police should and will have body cameras, the mayor, the police chief. However, Councilmember Kenyon McDuffie would like to draft new legislation, or he plans to draft new legislation that would make body camera footage, all of it, subject to public records requests. The police chief says no, it needs to be limited some more than that. What do you say?
Well, first of all, Mayor Bowser, in her budget proposal, proposed that all the video be exempt from the Freedom of Information Act.
Correct.
And as a journalist, I, of course, have an opinion, professional opinion, that would be outrageous.
Correct.
The chief testified at the special hearing on this. Kenyon McDuffie, the judiciary chairman of the committee, took it out of he says he's taking it out of the budget. It is too important to be passed as a budget item. He held a hearing yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, in which he says he is opposed to exempting these videos from, and the question is, how do you make them available, not whether?
I think that's a good conversation.
The chief stood up, or sat down actually, when she testified, and she said that she supports the mayor's proposal to exempt them, that they would still be available for defense counsel, for investigations, and for people who make allegations of police brutality or police wrongdoing, but that day in and day out of thousands of interactions between police officers should not just be out. So, example, if you were stopped by a police officer for bad driving or something, then they let you go, and then your friends find out that you were stopped, they would go get that video and put it on YouTube and make fun of Kojo Nandi.
Correct.
But when there are more serious issues in domestic violence, if a spouse is at home screaming and yelling, their children are under attack, or he's under attack, whoever it might be, and the officer comes in, settles that down, some charges are made, do you want that kind of video
That is
Just that.
precisely the example she used, and
Yes.
she made the argument that if that kind of video were to be made readily accessible to the public, there would be a great deal of redacting required so that the personal business of the family involved would not make them identifiable.
Yeah, but even now there are police reports. I'd like to hear the Attorney General's view on this. But even now there are police reports that recount all of those horrific details and domestic violence and other matters. But this is the modern era of communication and video. I mean, I have a cell phone now that I could take your picture and it could be on the air at my station in fewer than 10 minutes. Video is part of the place, so we have to see what's going to happen. And I know in Maryland there are moves to at least start to look at this. General,
She makes the argument that it would take 17 hours to redact a 4-minute video.
well, I would have to answer that. I respect the
He's
chief's
going to
view,
challenge
and,
that,
and I
yes.
talked to several of the chief's officers at the Blue Mass this week when they honored all the officers who have died this past year, 120 in the country, 10 in our region. And they say it takes a while. It takes too long, but there are ways to do it. Seattle does it in its pilot project. They do it minute for minute. If you have a minute of video, they can redact the video within a minute, not 4 hours.
Mr. Attorney General.
Well, I'm not sure where you draw the line, but I do agree that most of it should be open and available. But I think you really do want to protect the privacy of individuals who encounter police on a daily basis. I mean, most of them aren't committing crimes. And even in a situation where you have an allegation of domestic violence, I'm not sure it ought to be available to the public. I'm not sure that the participants in the fracas or whatever it is would want it to be available to the public. Most of those relationships, or many of those relationships, can be healed. Sometimes there is an actual physical violence in it, and I could see it being destructive.
The plan is that an officer will not have the camera on 24 up for the entire time he or she's on duty,
Right.
but that if they are responding to a call,
Mm-hmm.
then they will answer. If they stop a car, if they respond to a police radio call, or if they're taking a police action. And if you're going up to a bunch of guys standing on the corner and you want to see
Right.
what they're doing, is that a requirement? I don't think so. But if you are acting in your police capacity, then maybe you have to turn the camera on.
Right.
Yes, you do.
But you agree that it's, well, you
I
did
think,
say it.
I think the general rule ought to be it's open and available, but there need to be some protections for citizens who aren't committing crimes or who aren't charged with committing crimes from disclosure that would be embarrassing or just something they don't want made public.
And also some officers, maybe just one more point on this. Some officers I've spoken to have said that, Tom, right now we have a great, and the chief has mentioned it, we have discretion. If I go up and I see somebody littering, and then
Yep.
and then I say, well, I just tell the person, pick up that, go, put that in the trash, go on, don't do that. Well, if I have a camera on, and I may have to arrest that person, or I may have to take more stringent action than I might otherwise, given the circumstance. Or otherwise, people say, well, you didn't arrest him, or you didn't do this, or you didn't do that. And so the police will be, I mean, I wouldn't want a camera on me in my journalism work. And I'm sure as Attorney General is as ethical as you are and the work you do, you don't want a camera on your work.
Well, absolutely not. And I mean, another example where I think it can lead down a not good path is when you're talking about juveniles. There may be somebody who's out there committing an offense, but is 15, 16, 17 years old. You really want that to be public. Maybe we do, but there are some situations.
That's why it
which
should
I'm
be
pretty
a
sure we
full
don't.
discussion and not
Yeah.
a slam dunk in a budget
It
bill.
can be a slippery slope, and we'll get to your specific duties in a second. But one more Attorney General issue. The DC Attorney General, Carl Racine, has taken action on at least one developer who has been flipping houses in the District of Columbia. WAMU 88.5 Martin Ostermule has done a 3-part series on this, and I know you lived in and sold a house in the District of Columbia.
It wasn't a flip.
I lived in and sold a house in the District of Columbia. Neither case was it a flip because we had been living in those houses for a pretty long time. But as the real estate market in this area has risen, there are a lot of people, it turns out, who have been simply buying houses for the purposes of renovating them as quickly as possible and selling them at a much higher price than they bought those houses. And what we're discovering now is that a lot of that work has been done was not only shoddy, but was done without the appropriate permits.
Well, Carl Racine said that he would make consumer protection one of his key issues, and that is one of his principal roles as the Attorney General. And flipping of homes is a nationwide experience. I mean, I'm aware of it, but in the District of Columbia, particularly, when you sell a home, there is a requirement that you must disclose defects. And if you, for one case that I'm sorry, I don't have the name of the couple that he's suing. One's a Boeing executive or something like that. But the key issue here is, if you have just a staircase railing, but you put the railings too far apart, which is for a baby's head to be caught or somebody to slip, there are all kinds of things, serious and minor issues, where apparently these reflected in the lawsuit. That we are worried that their homes that they paid $600,000 and more for are woefully inadequate.
And you are now in the business of enforcing regulations yourself.
We are. Consumer protection is a big part of our portfolio, and
mortgage of issues in Prince George's County was a big issue.
Big issue in Prince George, all over the state, really. And Maryland participated in the national mortgage foreclosure settlement. We got Doug Gansler, my predecessor, got $1.2 billion for Maryland to be distributed to people who were victims of the shoddy practices of banks or the sloppy practices of banks when they were foreclosing on those properties.
Have you seen the flipping of houses as much as in the suburbs? I mean, there was a report this week that even in Chevy Chase, D.C., Connecticut and Western Avenue, if you're looking at a house in that area, you start at $1 million.
Home prices in many areas of suburban Washington are extremely expensive. I haven't heard complaints about flipping as a problem in Maryland recently, but I've seen it going on in the District of Columbia for the past 40 years.
Yes.
Should mention that you were sworn in as Maryland's 46th Attorney General this past January, so congratulations on
Thank
that.
you.
But let's get to the hot issues at hand. A whole lot has happened in Baltimore in the past month after protests, riots, charges against 6 police officers in the case of the death of Freddie Gray in police custody. Questions raised in recent days as to whether Baltimore City State's attorney may have overstepped in the charges brought against the officers. And now Attorney General Loretta Lynch announcing that the Department of Justice will launch a civil rights investigation into Baltimore's police department. You issued a statement. I'll just read the last part of the statement here, where it says, the Office of the Attorney General is prepared to provide all necessary counsel and resources to respond to this emergency. But where does your office fit into this complicated picture?
It's a great question. So the Attorney General in Maryland is the attorney for the governor, the General Assembly, the courts, and we had a series of legal issues to untangle. The Attorney General is also a prosecutor in Maryland, but our jurisdiction comes from either a directive from the governor or from the General Assembly. So there's certain criminal statutes that we can enforce as a matter of law, stuff that the General Assembly has passed. And if the governor directs or if a state's attorney requests help, we can participate there. That wasn't necessary. Last week, we had the U.S. Department of Justice coming in to investigate, and Marilyn Mosby is an independently elected state's attorney in Baltimore City, and she has had adequate resources to investigate and ultimately to charge people for the situation up there.
But you have, as Attorney General, been requested. A lot of people were arrested, hundreds, during the recent unrest. A number of issues arise from those arrests, including that those individuals were held too long before being either charged or released. As a state senator, you advocated for arrested individuals to be presented, what's known as presentment, before district court commissioners without undue delay. Now, as Attorney General, you've been asked to decide just how much the Constitution permits for presentment, as it's known. It's somewhat complicated in this situation.
It really is. I mean, as a legislator, I advocated for more rapid presentment of defendants to court commissioners or to district court judges. But it was my job as Attorney General to defend what happened last week when the Baltimore police and courts were overwhelmed. The police on Monday night were bringing people in who were throwing rocks and cinder blocks at police who were lighting fires in stores, and they were arresting them, bringing them to the Baltimore City Jail. And because of the disturbances citywide, were immediately redeployed to the streets, so they didn't get a chance to fill out the paperwork. And it fell to my office to defend that long period of time. It was almost 48 hours before some of those people were presented to a district court commissioner to set bail or to release them.
And a lot of those people said, we just happened to be standing there and
Yep.
we got picked up and rounded up. So how do you resolve a situation like that?
Well, it ultimately was resolved. Most of them were released. There were a few that were held. There were some that for whom bail was set and they couldn't post the bail. But instead of taking 24 hours, as our court rules require, it took almost 48 for some of them.
I didn't realize till you told me out in the lobby this morning that your office is actually in Baltimore. For some reason, I thought you were in Annapolis, where the state government is, not in Baltimore. But when you ran for office last year for Attorney General, the Maryland State Fraternal Order of Police endorsed you in June, said that you had been a friend of the police department. You have a strong record on criminal matters in terms of individual rights. But what is as you look over this kind of view from Ferguson last August to Baltimore a week ago, seems like a month ago now, but what is your view about in the law enforcement world? Are the police officers under attack? Are there a few bad apples creating an intolerable situation that's exacerbated by income disparity? I mean, where are we in the country in police and citizenship?
It's a mixed bag. I mean, I think you look at the Freddie Gray situation and you have to conclude
The man who died.
he was the man who died. He died in police custody. It's undisputed. He died in he was fatally injured in police custody. That shouldn't have happened. The Baltimore Sun did a great series of articles about police brutality cases in the city. Baltimore paid out over $5 million over a 3-year period in police brutality cases. The cap for liability is only $200,000, so that's a lot of cases that they settled or lost. On the other hand, the folks who are doing that work in Baltimore put their lives on the line every day. I went on, I can't remember if it was Tuesday or Wednesday, I went to visit Brian Wassam. He was a police officer who was hit in the head with a cinder block on Monday night and knocked out cold, seriously injured. He's in the ICU. I think he was paralyzed from the waist down for a period of time. And he said to me, look, we were standing there. He said, I didn't have a shield. Most of my colleagues didn't have shields. A few did. People were throwing bricks at us, cinder blocks, feces, urine. And our job was to stand there and hold the line, try to stop the violence, but not engage the protesters. And that takes real guts. Those guys were extraordinarily courageous. And I think they're heroes.
I sent the picture. I think that was the first where like 8 or 9 officers were carrying him.
He was the guy.
He was the guy in that horrible that photograph.
Hit in the head with a cinder block.
On to the telephones. Here is Joshua in Richmond, Virginia. Joshua, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi. I was calling earlier in regards to body cameras for police officers, and my question is within their admissibility in court, but also due to the cell phone technology that everyone now has access to, as civilians are now recording police during arrests, during detainments, and in this legal gray area where some police officers are ordering citizens to delete these videos or trying to tamper with them in some ways, are those going to be admissible on the same level, like as an equal with body cameras, or will they not be admissible? What do you guys see as the future for citizen?
Well, there's only really one lawyer in this room, Brian.
Yeah, I play one on television.
3 opinions.
Yes, I mean the short answer is they're likely to be admissible. I mean, it's just like eyewitness testimony. It's not necessarily 100% reliable, but it's admissible in court. And so videos taken by citizens, videos taken by police officers, cameras, security cameras, all of the video that those pick up is potentially admissible in court.
Even now, the Southern Poverty Law Center has just created a new app on your phone that will send video directly to their servers, which to me seems symptomatic of a larger problem of the police, like as you say, like this anti-police movement, as I feel it is more against anti-police brutality, and that citizens are afraid of police, the power that police have, and therefore need a resource from the Southern Poverty Law Center in order to feel comfortable.
We do know about the app the Southern Poverty Law Center has created. For those who don't know about it, it's an app that allows any video you are shooting of police to be streamed directly to the Southern Poverty Law Center. So even if your mobile device is seized by police, or even if it is deleted there by police, it will still be available at the Southern Poverty Law Center's website. But you offer the opinion that you think that these videos are in fact admissible in court.
Yeah, they are, and
subject to challenge about how they're videotaped, because you can videotape things that you don't like and not videotape things.
Absolutely.
Right. So, can I just make note that Chief Lanier sent, after a couple of embarrassing incidents where police officers walked up to people with videotape. She set out, I think it's like a 7-page general order to the police officers that was in the starkest terms that unless someone is doing something that directly interferes with your ability to do your job, then you cannot tell any person to stop videotaping. It's a very good order for somebody who's looking for a guide to other jurisdictions.
Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Our guest is Brian Frosh, Attorney General for the state of Maryland, the former Democratic state senator who represented Montgomery County. Have questions for him? You can shoot us an email to kojo@wamu.org or call 800-433-8850. There are other complicated matters you have weighed in on. Can you talk about the bill that would ensure that lesbian couples have equal access to fertility treatments? Can you explain what that bill would require and the issues it raises? It's quite complicated.
It is very complicated, and very simply, what the bill does is it extends insurance coverage to lesbian couples who need in vitro fertilization in order to get pregnant and bear a child. Inadvertently, the bill would exclude or set up a separate class of folks who would not be entitled to insurance, and that would be a woman who needs IVF, who is married to a man who is infertile. They would not be eligible, and it was unintentional. It's a tiny little class, but there is that little wrinkle in the bill. We think the bill can still be signed. I hope Governor Hogan will sign it, but it's a wrinkle that needs to be addressed in a future legislative session.
Your role is to advise the governor and the legislature when a proposed law such as this might run afoul, in this case, of the Affordable Care Act.
Well, yes, absolutely. It's our job. It's our job to do a legal analysis of every bill that gets to the governor's desk and tell the governor when there are constitutional problems or other legal problems.
460 lawyers he's got to do this.
That's right. Probably not enough.
It's not enough.
Let's talk about Exelon. The Public Service Commission before May 15th is to vote on the $6.8 billion merger with Pepco. You have written and filed paperwork
and called in on this broadcast,
and harassed us to no end, saying it's an outrageous proposal that benefits only the shareholders of Exelon, not the customers of Pepco. I was looking at, there's a 5-member Public Service Commission. I was looking at the members, 3 of whom have been appointed in the last 3 or 4 years. Are you confident that this board is going to recognize the issues you and others have raised and turn this down? And if they do turn it down, what next?
Well, I hope they do turn it down. As you say, I think it benefits primarily the shareholders of Pepco and the shareholders of Exelon. They stand to gain. The Pepco shareholders, depending on the stock price in any given day, somewhere between 1.5 and 1.8 billion dollars. And in sharp contrast to that, the ratepayers in Pepco, for Pepco, stand to gain $94 million. So that's the split of the so-called benefits. What is, I don't know whether the Public Service Commission is going to approve it or disapprove it.
Is the public discussion over? They are now weighing the 5 board members are weighing, and then they will vote. I think it's before May 15th or no later than May 15th. They have to vote.
Yes, that's right.
And it's a simple majority vote wins.
That's right.
8.2, and then
three votes will carry the day.
If they approve this merger, is there a legal appeal process over? Is that it? That's a done deal.
The Department of Justice, the Federal Trade Commission, can weigh in if they think it's an antitrust problem. And in fact, Exelon would have 85% of the ratepayers in the state of Maryland and a big swath of the ratepayers all up and down the east coast of the United States.
Exelon says, and it said it would be more efficient, more reliable, and we know what the issues about Pepco and reliability are, that they would not block the solar industry. That they just make all these assertions and promises in your view of them, and that this will be a good thing. Gas market that you just described would be, in fact, good in the long run for the ratepayer.
If you like monopolies, it'd be a great thing. But the problem with it is Exelon has a huge fleet of nuclear reactors, and right now the power that they produce is above the market. The price for petroleum products has dropped in the past year or two, and the nuclear reactors are uncompetitive, and Exelon's incentives all go toward getting rate increases to shore up its nuclear fleet. So we think that it's likely to be bad for ratepayers, that rates are more likely to go up faster if Exelon is the
But the Public Service Commission just recently put out, it does a lot of things. I didn't realize they just put out an announcement for people how to rent limousines if you're going to a prom or to a wedding trip, and whether the ruling, because they regulate apparently limousines. I didn't know that. But any worries at all about the 5-member board? I will.
Well,
have you made rulings in the past that worry you, or you think they're on board for your point of view?
I don't have any idea.
I'm trying to say, do you want to lobby the board now?
I'd love to lobby the board, but not allowed to do that. I am allowed to speak publicly about what my views are, but not allowed to lobby the board.
It's an interesting group. We don't have time to go into the 5 members. I looked them all up and read their bios. It's an interesting group of people.
Yep.
Same-sex marriage has been legally recognized in Maryland since 2013, but it continues to be a matter of debate in a lot of states around the country. You recently weighed in with a survey on the state of marriage equality around the nation. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, we did. The states around the country signed amicus briefs in the case before the Supreme Court, and we joined Massachusetts and other states that were urging the court to recognize that marriage is a right guaranteed by the Equal Protection Clause. And in addition to that, there were a number of people in my office who wanted to take an extra step. And they wrote a report that I thought was really persuasive and interesting, that shows that the laws that have been passed in the various states around the country that prohibit same-sex couples from getting married have been generated mostly by animus and fear. And you can see it in the timing of the laws that were passed, and you can see it in the language that the supporters of those laws used in urging their adoption. And that's what our report is mostly focused on.
We're running out of time. Later in the broadcast, you should know that Kimberly Perry, the executive director of DC Vote, will be joining us. Right now, we're talking with Brian Fosh, Attorney General for the state of Maryland.
That report shows there's like 12,500 same-sex couples in Maryland. 20% of them have children. The Supreme Court coming up on its decision. There's some discussion that Chief Justice Roberts can maybe reach a conclusion to support same-sex marriage, but not say it's a constitutional right, but say it's sex discrimination. Is that a valid thing? Is that people just hoping he can switch, or people worrying he might switch his vote?
Well, as a supporter of marriage equality, I would
just
say,
put your lawyer hat on here.
Yeah,
I mean, advocate hat.
I think that is that you could reach that conclusion without saying that it's a constitutional right, and I would be happy if the Supreme Court said that marriage equality is the law of the land. I'd be happier if they said it's a constitutional right, but it would be a victory if he did it based on the Civil Rights Act.
You can also watch the live video stream of this broadcast at our website, kojoshow.org. We got a tweet from Karen who says the app is by the ACLU, not the Southern Poverty Law Center, and we checked. Karen is indeed correct. You nosy Rosie, you. Thank you very much for
we
the
like
correction.
facts on this program.
We do like facts on this program. You're going to be up for another vote in 4 years. What do you hope to accomplish in your term as Attorney General?
I'm hoping to protect consumers from cheats and frauds and scams, and we've got some good stuff going on that now. I'm hoping to help make Maryland safer, that everybody in every neighborhood is safer than they have been, and that every man, woman, and child in the state has clean air to breathe and clean water to drink.
Okay, that sounds really good for public works. How are you doing with the Republican governor? Are you guys talking? Are you involved? Are you horrified by him?
We're talking. We're getting along. We don't agree on every issue, but we have a good working relationship.
He's reaching out to you and vice versa.
Yes.
Well, that's good.
Brian Fosh, he's Attorney General for the state of Maryland. He's a former Democratic state senator representing Montgomery County. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm honored to be here. Thanks a lot, Kojo.
Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. We'll be talking shortly with Kimberly Perry, Executive Director of DC Vote. And speaking of voting, Tom Sherwood, what's going on in Ward 8 of the District of Columbia? At last report, the two leading candidates, Muriel Bowser's favorite, LaRuby May, was just 80 votes ahead of Trayon White. And it is my understanding that we should know more soon.
Well, 80 may be enough. I talked to the Board of Elections just moments before this program, and the Board of Elections says that they expect to name the unofficial winner at 5 o'clock today. They've gone through about 1,000 ballots, and people are thinking, why did it take so much time? But they had to verify the ballots and give time legally for people to come in and say, I voted at one address, but I actually live here, or vice versa, and they had to check all of that. So now they've done that. At 5 o'clock, about 5, they're going to name the winner today, and then officially designate the winner May 14th in a vote by the board. And then whoever wins will be sworn in that day as the council member. If Trayon White loses, I suspect he will challenge it. There's some suggestion that the board may do a recount, even though it doesn't meet the 1% threshold. But who's going to replace Marion Barry on the DC Council from Ward 8? We may know at 5 o'clock today.
At 5 o'clock this afternoon. And if there's a challenge, what's the procedure again?
We don't have time.
It'll take a little while for the procedure to come about. The incumbent mayor, Muriel Bowser, says she wants to bring the Washington Burgundy and Gold football team to the city of Washington.
You say the name either?
It's called the Redskins sometimes, but
Okay,
I try
so
not to say that.
Yes, that's correct. She said it again today at the news conference. And
But the lease isn't up in Prince George's County for another 12 years.
Well, it takes time. You have to plan things. And also, Dan Snyder and the leadership has already indicated they don't want to stay there. They won't say that directly, but I've just said it for them. Governor McAuliffe in Virginia says they're going to go to Loudoun County. Jack Evans here in town, and Mayor Bowser now, says, oh, no, Loudoun County is not the center of the metropolitan area where the team should be. And every mayor since Tony Williams has supported bringing the team back to town. The name is a complication. And then Charles Allen, who's a ward member from Ward 6 up where the RFK is, doesn't want the team there because he wants that whole area developed as neighborhoods. But the mayor says you can have a team, you can have neighborhood amenities, parks, recreation. And so we now have another mayor pushing to get the Skins in town. She's, unlike Mayor Gray, who wouldn't say the name, she has said Redskins several times to show the Dan Snyder team that she's willing to discuss with them, bring the team back.
What do
Don't
you
worry
think,
about the
Kimberly
name
Perry?
later.
Should the team come back here, or should it come back here only on condition that it changes the name?
They need to change the name.
Well,
I
that
too
would
refer
not-
to them as the Washington football
But
team.
it's a drop dead question. If they don't change the name, you wouldn't support their return.
They need to change the name.
Kimberly Perry, she's the executive director of DC Vote, and as you can hear, she has opinions on a lot of other stuff. It's a national advocacy organization aimed at equality for all in the district. If you have questions or comments for Kimberly Perry, call us at 800-433-8850. Go to our website, kojoshow.org, watch the live video stream, see what Kimberly Perry looks like. You could also ask a question or a
That's a subtle
comment.
reminder that you're on TV while you sit there.
Yes.
You know, radio used to be so wonderful when you didn't have to dress
Your
for
shirts have
radio.
gotten better with the
It's the video stream. You've been forced to do it. Three of DC Vote's activists were arrested last week. They were protesting a vote in the House of Representatives attempting to overturn a DC law protecting DC workers from discrimination around reproductive rights. They unfurled a DC flag on the balcony of the House of Representatives. Rosalind Kahn Cohen, Michael S. Bolton, and one James L. Jones. Why does that name sound
He
familiar?
used to be a respected journalist. Now he's an advocate.
Yes, he used to be a respected
this
journalist.
radio
Here
station.
he was.
And they
was
stood up and
loose
shouted,
lips.
DC votes no. DC votes no.
And so James Jones now has an arrest record. But why this strategy?
We can't sit by while these atrocious acts go by. They're so politically charged, right? Each time we've seen these anti-discrimination acts come about, or these disapproval resolutions, they are fueled by future or candidates for president. And so this is going to be a difficult appropriation season. So the outrage of DC residents over opposition to marijuana reform or our anti-discrimination laws, our gun laws coming up, abortion, all of these things, we want to keep the direct action going.
There's still a possibility that the Republicans, particularly in the House, could move on the budget for the city when it goes before the Congress again. There's a move to abolish the legal marijuana law and to do all manner of things which the conservative Republicans want to do. So even the fights you win are not over because of an ongoing
That's
thing.
exactly right.
One of the newest things that's happened, and tell me something about Justin Robinson. He has created, I don't know who he is, but he's created a PAC, a political action committee called Not Your District.
Love
And
it.
his intent is to raise money and to put on campaigns like in Andy Harris is in Maryland's
Right.
district. If Andy Harris wants to inject himself into the District of Columbia, that the Not Your District PAC would maybe run ads, maybe support candidates against him, and do this in other places around the country.
Everybody
It
knows.
sounds like this could be a viable thing
Yeah.
if you can fund the PAC.
Right.
So what's
That's right.
happening with this? And
We've
tell us a
gotta
bit
make-
about Justin Robinson.
Well, look, we've got to make these guys uncomfortable. It's just too easy to pick on the district. So district residents are getting pissed off, sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so people are raising up. But we need power.
You need
And,
money,
and
which is
through
power.
that's absolutely right. We need people and we need money. Justin Robinson is an example of a whole lot of young people who are who refuse to, again, sit around and do nothing. So he's taken it upon himself to start a PAC. Super smart. He recognizes where the power is. He's trying to be focused and choose a race that could matter. There's a lot of disgust for Andy Harris in the city. So we potentially could raise money. So I think it's
and we
great.
talked before you out in the lobby. Eric Holder was given a plaque at the DC Council at the time this week on Tuesday. He spoke up again for the rights of the district citizens to be represented. Is there any hope that you can usher him in to do a fundraiser for this PAC or to do something that would lend his name? He could raise a great deal of money for you guys with one event.
He sure could help elevate the issue. He already has done that, even in his role as Attorney General. So waiting to see what he chooses to do in this new transition.
You don't
we're
wait.
waiting.
Well,
See.
Tom is
Wait.
suggesting you shouldn't wait. to see
We've
what he
already
chooses to do.
reached out.
You know,
You should
This is
recruit
the
him.
right
my
thing.
big complaint
Put him to
against
work.
DC
We're
Vote
recruiting
and
hard.
everybody is that you guys are too polite. too process
Listen,
We
oriented.
probably need to take
Here's something. Go back to Justin Robinson for a minute. I mean, one of the things DC Vote definitely has to do, and I'm proud that we've been doing it over the last year, is using our platform to raise other people's voices. One organization cannot win this. This is a movement. This includes Josh Birch is incredible. Been talking about Josh for the last year, and I'm so happy to see other reporters and journalists start to recognize the work that he's doing because he's so diligent about it. Justin Robinson is the next one. Joan Ships. There are just so many. I could go on and on.
And
it's DC Vote's job, absolutely, even at different levels. And it's DC Vote's job to provide a platform for all of these various voices for equality. It's the only way we're going to see our way to the finish line.
Put on your headphones, Tom, because we're going to Adam in Washington, D.C. Adam, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hey, well, thank you, Coach, for having me on. This is Adam Eidinger. I propose the marijuana initiative, and, it's very clear to me that if we don't stand united in the city, then our initiative could be overturned as early as this fall. And, it's...
What do you mean by stand united?
Well, I think really, some groups were kind of shy of working with the Cannabis Campaign because it's not their main issue. If you're in a group working on women's issues or a group working on other criminal justice issues, maybe you don't want to blend it, associate with the marijuana folks. But clearly, we've broken down any kind of second-class status of marijuana users in the city because 70% of the public voted to legalize it and to recognize the rights of the users. So I just think we have to really come out with sort of a Hong Kong-style Occupy Central, tens of thousands of district residents flooding Capitol Hill to finally get to the...
Apparently you and Congressman Jason Chaffetz had an interaction?
So there were some great folks from DC Vote who stood up with signs during his hearing. This was a few weeks ago. And I was actually not planning to disrupt the hearing. I support them, but I was seated. I kept my mouth shut. I looked at them, but I didn't, hold a sign up. And just sitting there, I was asked to leave. And I said, look, I'm not being disruptive to the police officer.
Potential.
You have to go. And they eventually carried me out and arrested me. And I have a court date next Wednesday.
Well,
just for getting them, I guess, dirty looks or something. But you're allowed to give politicians dirty looks.
And for those of us there who stood up, we can attest that for once, Adam did not participate in this action, but
I guess because he's a known quantity, they arrested him because of the potential of disruption, and obviously that would be unfair.
This direct action, though, is taking off, and it's important for residents in the city to see those of us who are willing to take a risk and to provide additional opportunities for them to participate. We went from, just a handful of people willing to demonstrate with us at that committee hearing to, upwards close to 20 when we went to the House Gallery last week. So the more we do it, more we'll see and feel comfortable participating.
Adam, thank you for your call. You too can call us at 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wamu.org. Leaders in both the House and the Senate seem likely to use the appropriations process to challenge the district on a range of issues. Concerned about that?
We are. It's going to be a tough appropriation season. Not only will we see attacks to our marijuana reform laws, we've got an existing abortion rider we need to get off. And so we should not be comfortable with that at all.
That's an abortion rider that's been on for decades, right? That says the city may not use any funds.
That's right.
On
locally taxes.
That's correct. We're going to see attacks to our gun laws again, as you all know. And of course, Heritage Action and others have already said, all right, we lost on this disapproval resolution, but we certainly are going to make our way to the appropriations process to try to see it through. So again, lots of momentum. We fought really hard to keep that anti-discrimination or keep that disapproval resolution from going any further. The groups, national groups, really band together, were well organized. We were lobbying on the Senate side to assure the Senate never took it up. Statements from the White House saying that the president would veto it. It was a really good exercise in coalesced activity to assure we could pass our law and they would stay out of it.
People who listen to this program may want to help, maybe want to oppose you, but I'm just thinking that again with Eric Holder in the Wilson building on Tuesday and being lauded and saying something nice about voting rights and all that. I mean, where is the direct action where Mayor Muriel Bowser picks up the phone and says, Eric, we really need some help here. We need to get some funding. We can't use city funds, taxpayer funds. We need citizens to actually see something other than these sporadic incidents on the Hill and different places. So we have a sustained campaign. The marijuana thing was a sustained campaign. Voting rights, sustained. I guess you guys you seem to bubble up and then you disappear. It seems to me I need to see as a journalist, because journalists are not your friends on this. You don't get a lot of coverage even up on the Hill.
That's part of the
Tell them
reason.
about the door-to-door campaign you're working.
That's part of what
Right.
you don't see. Doesn't mean the work isn't going on. So let me first say we have a mayor who supports us in an incredible way. Bowser has stepped up around issues of voting rights and budget autonomy. She is a statehood advocate. She, by now, clearly and has known for a long time the importance of these issues and has not wavered in her support at all. So no doubt she'd make a phone call to whomever she needed to advance this cause. We're doing a lot. So in addition to the direct action you've seen over the last 3 weeks that happened to get some press, we're very clear about our goals and ambitions. We don't think there's consensus in the Congress right now to get the new Columbia Admissions Act passed, but it doesn't mean we stop lobbying. It doesn't mean we stop educating people, and it doesn't mean we stop trying to get support. What we realize, though, is while we need to keep people excited in the District of Columbia, we can't be alone on this. We got to engage people out in the states. Members of Congress don't respond to us. We didn't elect them, but they will respond and listen to their very own constituents.
There's been a division between people who are for 100% statehood, 2 senators, a member of the House, and full autonomy over the District of Columbia locally. There are people who say, "Oh, we should just need voting rights." The city, if the city got voting rights in the House at minimum, then we don't need to be classically a state. Have you solved that in terms of the people who pull in 2 different directions? There, people who are for statehood are offended by the people who say, let's settle for half of both.
Here's what we know: that debate only exists in the District of Columbia in a very small, minute community. We've got to get this message out across the nation and in the international community.
You're called DC Vote, though, but you're for statehood?
We are called DC Vote, and we are for democratic equality for the District of Columbia. So let me finish. We're getting word out across the board. We've got to go beyond the borders of the district. So we're working in states to build lists of people who are sensitive to this issue, who care about fairness, who care about democratic equality, voting rights. So issues that are similar to this, getting them to sign up, getting them to donate, support this cause. But we got to go further than that. We've got to get them to start to make visits to their lawmakers and members of Congress
But are
that
they
have
lobbying for
jurisdiction over the district.
But are they lobbying for DC Vote or statehood or either or both?
They are lobbying for democratic equality for the District of Columbia. So whether we put a bill in front of them that says, hey, look, this congressional interference has got to stop. Your members are spending more time on the people of the District of Columbia than they are in your own district. We need budget autonomy. So we're just trying to get local control of our budget, our laws, and the full representation that we deserve.
Okay,
The conversation and
battle on all fronts.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And we
I
just
got it.
further fragment the movement every time we try to divide it on a particular piece of legislation. We got a lot of work to do.
Presidential and possible presidential contenders are already jockeying to present their bona fides. In some cases, they include plans for the district. Do you see that as a real threat, that kind of posturing that some of those candidates are making?
It is a threat. It's a complete waste of time, though, and I think we've got to call it for what it is and make sure they don't get away with political grandstanding at the expense of the residents who live here.
How about on the Democratic side of the ticket? Who do you see as the district's potential strongest ally?
We've got to wait and see. Part of the reason we're doing some work in Iowa and New Hampshire is pretty obvious, and trying to build alliances there so we can have people bring it up as these candidates go out to those states and to look for support from those caucuses, that they'll hear this issue of democratic equality for the district and be forced to respond and really get on the record saying what they're willing to do.
Have you invited Marco Rubio to take a drive around Washington with you?
We've not done that.
Maybe.
Perhaps we should.
Well, I just wonder if you guys should. You've got the Cato Institute here in town. You've got the Heritage Foundation. I'm sorry, name. Conservative or laissez-faire type organizations. Maybe those organizations can hold a forums on this subject.
You actually believe that the Heritage Foundation orchestrated that vote in the House of Representatives? Are you sure? How do we know that that's the case?
Yeah, Heritage Action has been pretty vocal on pushing these bills. Again, most of it politically charged, but absolutely. And
why not call them out and ask for a public discussion with them?
You know, the policy piece of this is an important one, but again, it gets so mired in political grandstanding. Again, we just have to call it for what it is and push back every time.
Would you attend a forum put on by the Cato Institute?
I would. We've actually had conversations with conservative think tanks about.
Not the Brookings, because that's too liberal.
No, it is seen. I think as liberal, absolutely no.
Or maybe within minutes of your saying
but I have had conversations with Cato, trying to figure out what sort of policy conversations we actually can bring to life. We did a policy symposium with the College of William and Mary last year and invited 11 scholars from across the nation to come and weigh in on how to rethink representation for the district, and it was fascinating what came out.
We mentioned the football team earlier. How about the soccer team? We got an email from Kimberly who says, DC, or it says, ask Kimberly. DC Vote sent out a tweet earlier this week hinting that DC United's new jersey next year will feature some sort of pro-voting rights message. Can we expect that the black and red will take the field with a no taxation without representation on their jerseys?
So DC United actually tweeted great time with DC Vote this morning on collaborating on a 2016 primary jersey. It's no secret that DC United, their coach, Ben Olsen, who we honored just Wednesday night, and the team is in favor of democratic equality for the District of Columbia. And so they've supported DC Vote for years.
It'd be good. I think
we'd like to up the ante a bit and have a stronger partnership.
I'd like to see
we're out of time.
On their jersey, the George Washington with his mouth taped over on their jersey. It's great.
Don't be silenced. Yeah.
Kimberly Perry is the executive director of DC Vote, a national advocacy organization aimed at equality for all in the district. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter at NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Always a pleasure. And thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Nnamdi. Coming up Monday on the Kojo Nnamdi Show, what's ahead for Virginia commuters? VRE Director Doug Allen on plans to expand the 23-year-old service. Then at 1, Fairfax County bans discrimination based on gender identity in schools. We also check in with a school that took the same step a decade earlier. The Kojo Nnamdi Show, noon till 2 Monday on WAMU 88.5 and streaming at kojoshow.org.